Welcome everybody to MMA for Breakfast. I am Dan from Oregon, and Alexander Emelianenko is fighting this weekend. Kayla Harrison gets a nice victory, and Ray Cooper, the third, gets a victory in under 20 seconds. Oh my gosh, we got that and much, much more. It is August 17th. Let's look into this shit.
Let's do it.
History, science, education, energy, everything has always been controlled by the government since day one. CIA!
Look at the time.
You figure it out. You try to figure it out.
No, it
No,
seems like
because when
people
they
would.
look into it, it's common sense. When you look into it,
What is up, sickos? Thank you so much for joining us. And today we are joined by the esteemed DC Howard from MMA Today. You can catch all of his great world MMA guidelines, see what's happening in the world of MMA throughout the week. DC, how the hell are you doing, man? Awesome. I'm glad you could join us. There's no one better when it comes to exploring the international scene than yourself. And first, we're going to start off, I believe, with a PFL recap. That happened last night. And, man, PFL has not disappointed this year much whatsoever. You start off with the Facebook Watch, and I love tuning into those, especially this late in the season. You got a bunch of guys out there with 0 points that are trying to get finishes, trying to work their way into the playoffs. I think it makes for a nice, exciting night.
Takes. You know, it's unlike, people complain sometimes about UFC shows being too long, maybe because some of the fights don't have, real meaning maybe, but these fights, you tune in early and you got Jake Shields, fighting for his spot on Facebook. You got Rick Story fighting for a spot in the tournament, and really just, 12 great fights yesterday. So yeah, PFL just keeps rocking.
Oh man, right? And what I saw a stat, I think Khabib went 6-0 in his cornering duties, or 5-0 with all of his Dagestanian fellows.
Yeah, man. The Dagestani fighters had a little bit of a tough time. They were pretty big favorites, at the start of the tournament, a lot of the Dagestani fighters, and didn't get off to the start they were expecting. And then some of the guys who fell short last time, like Abubakar Nurmagomedov, Habib's cousin/brother, depending on what day of the week you ask him. Cousin for real. I think he got a big win. Magomed Karamov looked awesome against Bojan Velichkovic. Like he was looking just athletic and smooth. Other than the fight IQ, jumping a ton of guillotines, but Habib definitely had his guys ready to go, and they all picked up wins. And I think Abubakar might still be on the bubble, depending on what happens at the next show. But the rest of his guys got through to the playoffs.
Yeah, so he only has 3 points now, if I got everything correct, because he went to decision.
Yep.
But man, we had Ray Cooper. I don't know if he's considered like the dark horse of this whole event. What I love is he gets matched up against Jake Shields. His father had lost to Jake Shields previously. He came out and starched him. And PFL, if you come and starch someone, especially a headliner, they are not afraid to put you in that headlining slot. I think back to Andre Harrison, who was the headliner in the first card, undefeated fighter. He goes to a decision though. Lance Palmer gets a finish. The next card, Lance Palmer is headlining over Andre Harrison. So I love the excitement that they're pushing.
Yeah, they're really figuring out, different ways to try to get exciting fights. You're going to have pretty darn good fights anyways when you put together, world ranked, top 100 fighters in the division. Then you give them this extra incentive, the finishing bonus points. Like you say, just giving the fighters that put on great performances the headline spots, as opposed to, Jake Shields. He's their big name, but they didn't put him at the top of the card. He didn't win the first time, so it was interesting. And Cooper absolutely destroyed it. I wasn't sure after watching the first fight with Shields if we were looking at a situation where, Jake Shields was just toast and couldn't take a punch anymore. I think Cooper proves that he can pretty much probably knock out anybody at 170 if he hits him right.
Yes, yes. I got Flat Earth Deacon in the chat, and he says, Coop versus T Wood, make it happen. Might be a little crazy with that matchmaking, Flat Earth Deacon, but I understand what you're saying right there. Nice, impressive for him. And
Well,
man,
Woodley has to sign up for PFL first. You know, he's got to quit that UFC gig.
Yeah, in that
He can get him in the
TMZ gig
tournament
that he's
next year.
got. But let's talk about Jake Shields since we've already brought him up. Man, Jake Shields comes out and let's call it what it is, man. He wrestle humped the guy for the first 2 rounds, takes some big shots where he really scares us, and then dives in for that single leg every time. He always goes in for, oh, if I'm either going to like jab you or if I'm close enough, I'm just going to go in for the clinch on you. And he always eats looping shots when he does that. Scared the hell out of us, ends up taking, 30 punches in the 3rd round. They 10-9'd him, I guess, the first 2 rounds. The other guy got a 10-9 in the 3rd. And under the 10-9 scoring system, Shields comes out with a victory. Under Pride rules, I don't know if everyone would say the same thing.
I think you're right. I think Pride rules that would have been a 2-fight losing streak there for Jake Shields in the PFL.
Mm-hmm.
But, it was a Jake Shields fight for the first 10 minutes. I mean, we've seen him do this to a ton of guys, including Woodley. Just enact his grappling game plan. I think it's crazy when Shields takes a guy down and he'll be in guard. He'll just put his head down on the guy, and it's like there's a 120-pound bowling ball on the dude's chest. Like, he's still got those skills for at least looked like about 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
5 got pretty ugly, and probably not a good sign for Drake going forward, considering he didn't really get tested in the first 2 rounds of this one. He kind of did whatever he wanted to Tirado until the gas tank just went. So that'll definitely be something to watch. Jake's gonna have a really good day come tournament time if he wants to take this thing.
Yeah, then how do you feel about his quick return? Do you think, it's good for him, he can get back on the horse again and kind of shake that off? Or do you think, man, that's crazy for someone's brain to go through it that quick?
It's a tough question. It's a tough question for me to answer as someone who's never gotten their ass kicked in a pro fight and then, tried to get back in and train. I imagine a guy like Shields, one advantage he has is he doesn't have to spar before every fight. Like, he knows what he's going to be doing in there. He's going to be going for the takedown. He's going to be, kind of throwing hands, but mostly just, like you said, just try to get inside, get that clinch, get that single leg. So hopefully he can take minimal damage in camp. I think, a big problem is when guys, get knocked out and then head back to the gym on Monday and start getting hit in the head again. That science seems to think is a pretty bad idea, but hopefully a guy like Shields will be okay. I feel like when you're an old guy, speaking from experience on this one, some days you just wake up and feel like shit, and some days you wake up and your body feels like you're 20. So it might be a case of luck almost for Shields. Like, how does he feel that week? Does he feel like an old man, or does he feel like he's still got something in the tank?
Man, yeah, you do bring up a good point, though, man, because how many older veteran fighters have we heard where, they're just like, I don't spar anymore. I've got all that down. I could take a shot. I could do that. I work on all my technical whatnot, and that makes a lot of sense. It kind of does suck that you got to, really get in there and learn so much. These guys, they got so much experience, but their bodies just start failing them. MMA's a crazy sport, man.
It is, and yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Robbie Lawler was one of the first guys I remember really talking about that. I was like, I just had to cut out sparring at some point. You only have so many brain cells, so so at some point you're learning more than is getting punched out the other side, I guess.
Yes, but let's jump into kind of the people's main event of the night, which was Kayla Harrison making her second appearance over here in PFL. And Kyle says over here, a former world champion judoka and two-time Olympic gold medalist, Kayla Harrison moves to 2-0 via total domination of Josette Cotton. Harrison repeatedly ground and pounded from Mount, her more experienced foe, dropping strikes en route to a merciful third-round TKO.
That kid is good at recapping fights in 140 or 280 characters or whatever.
Oh, yes.
Shout out to Maldababa. Good man.
Always. He's always making an appearance here anytime we're doing a recap show. And Kayla, man, she came out. So what I heard is this is the first time that Cotton, I believe in her 8-1 career, had ever been the undersized opponent in one of her fights. She had always fought people bigger. And the only real highlights that I had seen was stuff that people put on Twitter. It was one of her Bellator prelim fights, I guess, and it was her jumping around out there like a pogo stick. And I was like, if she tries something like that, she's going to get double-legged in a second.
And she did. I mean, there was there's one highlight floating out there that I think hit my that I got in my recap article that was like just a beautiful takedown, just the best time double leg you can imagine off of a cotton punch. Yeah, I mean, people, I saw some people wondering how Harrison could be like a minus 1,400 favorite against a fighter that's 8-1, one of the top fighters in her division. Harrison only had one pro fight. Well, she showed us why. I mean, she just looked like a complete next level athlete. Looked pretty good in the striking too. She landed a nice head kick. She wasn't, she didn't fight like Ronda, the other famous judoka. She actually stayed patient on the feet and found a takedown opportunity instead of just, going crazy and forcing it. So, yeah, I thought pretty much everything we saw out of Kayla looked great. I mean, just got to figure out a way to get her down 10 pounds and get her a fight with Cyborg.
Yeah, I totally agree. And on that note, I heard that the idea, and I think this is Sean O'Connell maybe was talking about this, I'm not sure, but the idea was to have her fight at 55s a couple of times and then work her way down. Maybe the next one is at 50, and so they kind of work it in the middle and see, how she feels from there on working down. Because, yeah, this is like the super weight division, the super heavyweight out here.
The other fight that my wife and I were talking about is maybe she could fight Gabby Garcia. We've seen every once in a while, we see Gabby does some crazy weight cutting sometimes. It's real skinny. I don't know if she could make 155, but it's a pretty short list of potential opponents. That might be another interesting one for Kayla. I mean, I'm about 100% sure Kayla will probably crush Gabby in that fight. But hey, that's why we lock the cage door and do it.
Oh yeah, you know what? Some super heavyweight match. I am not opposed to that, especially when you see the caliber of fighters that Gabby's fighting. How about we let's stop the old lady nonsense and bring in a Kayla Harrison? That's pretty nice. Maybe after she can potentially get a fight with Cyborg, if she beats her, they'll give her Gabby, because Gabby's like her training partner or something. She could work that as
give her a
stepping
spot in the Hall of Fame about then.
What was that? Put her into the Hall of Fame?
Beat Cyborg.
Oh yeah. And man, who knows where that will happen? Because Cyborg, as what I hear, is trying to fight out her contract. UFC really doesn't have a 45-pound division. Bellator's look stronger in my view. And Bellator, you jump over there, they'll treat you like a star because they don't have many. And from what I heard, R.J. Clifford, who works for FS1 and whatnot, he said he heard that Machida got a massive payday from Bellator. He's like, man, I can't wait till those other Bellator guys figure out how much Machida's making.
It's the case of being paid to be just another face on, a 13 fight card as opposed to being paid to be the headliner, right?
Oh yeah.
It brings that value for Bellator. Yeah, that's cool. And like you say, most of the good fights for Cyborg aren't in the UFC. I mean, she already fought Holm. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing that fight again.
Yes.
Just since Holm was at least competitive, but other than that, nothing much for Chris to do. But ahead of ourselves with Kayla there. She's got a little work to do.
Yeah. No, I love PFL seems to be doing the right thing, man. They're bringing in the correct opponents for her. We'll work her up nice and slow.
Yeah.
Give her that Bellator MVP treatment or something, you know.
Hey, Cotton was a decent opponent. I was actually pretty impressed they gave her, someone of that caliber on Fight 2, but obviously they know what they have here.
But on that note, man, since you kind of chose the 8-1 girl, I don't know many girls who even have records like that are that big. How many more girls are there to choose from?
There aren't that many. I mean, there's a couple. There's both Bobby Joe Dalziel who beat Cotton in a fight where Cotton didn't show up looking that great, in my opinion, a couple of years ago. She's on the radar. Sarah Patterson is a pretty solid fighter at that weight class. Moriel Charneski, but I mean, this is pretty much the whole list. I mean, we're talking about fighters that are around 500 here once we get past Cotton. There might be a couple more that are slipping my mind, but it's shallow. It's shallow. They're really trying to build something from nothing, which is why 145 is probably where she just has to go.
And man, I'm all for less weight cutting. Unfortunately, in this situation, we got to go the other route, and
yeah,
it is what it is.
Otherwise, you have to tell bantamweights to start eating cookies like UFC does for the Cyborg fights. No.
Yeah, and on that note, real quick, you say Holly Holm is a nice test for Cyborg again. I actually thought Holly beat Durandamy, especially if you would have taken any points away. So that first fight could have been a super fight with like the featherweight champ versus the featherweight champ, and they freaking UFC ruined that shit. I can't believe
that was the plan, right? That was the plan. Get Holly the belt and then have Chris be the challenger. But those judges, it was that terrible fight. I mean, it was awful.
Yes.
We don't want to encourage anyone to go back and watch Durandamy Holm again. Don't just take our word for it.
Yeah, it'll just piss you off watching all the fouls and nothing happening about it.
Yeah, it's usually only in a John Jones fight. Eddie Alvarez, there's the under the radar guy who's always racking up the fouls.
Yes. But those are what is it? Luke Thomas was talking about yesterday on the unwritten rules of MMA, and one of them is you get one foul in a fight. You get to cheat one time, and you can totally get away with it every time. And that's kind of the Dundasso technique, as Chad Dundas would call it. Got to cheat once. All right, moving down the PFL card, though. I don't know how to pronounce this man's name, but Zeferino ended up getting the third-round tap. The Brazilian Samurai boasts 20 finishes, 16 by submission. And I was looking at this one. I was like, all right, this looks like it's definitely not going to go to a decision because both these guys love to finish their fights.
Yeah.
And he got that tap from the freaking back mount position. This one.
How often do you see that? Yeah. Definitely a case where Zeferino beat the crap out of him for 10 minutes first. Yeah, before he got that. It was a really good showing from Zeferino. If you didn't watch World Series of Fighting, he was a guy who had a pretty good tournament showing already. He got to the finals of their 8-man one-night tournament in 2015. Ended up losing to Brian Foster, but he could be a player come tournament time, with that experience and just, good skill set for tournament play, getting those quick finishes.
Heck yes, man. Yeah, someone on Twitter, they were talking about Ray Zeffo, and they're like, man, his transition from, rebranding from World Series, leaving that name behind because all we think of is poker, going to PFL, how are you really going to make it exciting, when you don't have the A-class fighters, or seeds at least. And dude, this shit is just, I love this point system that's going on, and a lot of people are liking it as well. Maybe it's only us hardcores though, because when I look at the numbers on Facebook, we're cracking like 3K watching. That's about it.
Yeah, which isn't great, but you see Facebook stream stats, and they're never super high. PFL won I think the first fight they showed, they didn't do a very good job of promoting the Facebook stream, and they had like 200 viewers, so shit, at least they're getting up into the thousands. But yeah, it'd be nice if more fans got out and watched this. I noticed that the major media sites have been, or at least, you know, the ones I looked at, were just covering the main card. And it's like, you're looking at a show where all the fights matter, and you don't even cover the undercard fights for previous shows. You know, it's interesting. If you don't tell the fans that these fights matter, they might not figure it out on their own. That's one of my qualms with mainstream media, you know?
Yeah.
They promote its product they're covering a little better, you know, they might get a few more fans long run, but hey.
Ray Seffo had to correct the guys over at MMA Junkie because they're calling them the Facebook prelims, and he's like, "No,
Yeah.
this is the Facebook watch stream. All these fights matter."
He had to correct Joe Martinez too. Joe Martinez got out there and announced it as the Facebook prelims. It's like,
oh no!
Someone have to write something else on your note card. Come on, man.
Right. Hopefully, some PFL guys gave him some notes on that. Like, no more of this, Joe. I love Joe, though. He's a great announcer.
Oh, he's good. This is actually a little bit interesting. PFL has a whole sheet of all the words you're supposed to use in association with this league that they gave to all the fighters. It's like, don't call it a tournament. You can only call it the playoffs. Just a lot of really strange lingo stuff. So yeah, they're definitely trying to spin it in certain directions.
They must have they're paying some good money to some marketing people that are giving them like these key words, because you know.
Exactly.
You don't want to say audit because that sounds bad. You say evaluation. There's just like this weird psychology shit they got going on. So maybe they think playoffs means more in Americans' head opposed to tournament does.
Yeah. Tournament sounds like blood sport or something, and playoff sounds like a sports league, which is obviously the direction they're trying to push things.
Yes. And man, so let's keep moving on.
Yeah.
What else did we have? The next one, Rick the Horror Story, lays Carlton, and I pronounce his last name minus, that's how I read it, to rest, choking out the Alaskan FC stalwart in the second round with a rear naked choke. A 19-fight UFC vet. Story is 5-1 in his last 6. And maybe one of the best things that Story did for his career was taking off over to PFL, man. They're like, hey, you want us to put in you in these like Jake Ellenberger type fights that you're going to get it in the UFC? He's like, nah, let's go try to win $1 million. And no offense, man, but every time you see an Alaskan FC guy, you know that this is his first real competition when he's coming into the lower 48. And Rick Story just took it to him, and I think took away Minus's undefeated record.
He did, and Minus was one of the better tested Alaska FC guys. He had just beat Justin Buchholz, but yeah, Rick Story is just he's a serious guy. I mean, you look at his old record. You know, people just look at his record. They say, oh, 21-9. Well, that's decent. It's like split decision loss to Gastelum. You know, close loss to you know, like Martin Kampman back when Kampman was a top contender. I mean, he had some close ones. Split decision loss to Mike Pyle. Like if you flip a couple of those, he would have had, you know, 6-fight win streak. He would have been in title contention talk, you know, back in like 2014 time. So it's like this is cool. It's seeing him, you know, possibly rewrite his story into, you know, being the star that he almost was, sort of back at the peak of his UFC run.
Man, and I think Rick Story beat up Gunnar Nelson up there in Canada, I believe.
Yeah, man.
They were trying
Gunnar
to feed
Nelson, Tarek Safadine, yeah, he's good.
And those are some people that the UFC was trying to push. Rick Story coming, taking him out. But once he got his freaking arm around his neck, you could just see it over his mouth and just slowly going down. We knew it was over at that point in time.
Yeah.
Nice finish over.
Good try from Carl Minnis. You know, it's just a crazy step up, like you said, from fighting like number 500 in the world to fighting like a guy in the top 30.
Yes.
Big shift.
And then here's what Kyle's got to say about Abus Magomedov. Clinches the top middleweight seed, crushing the colossal Anderson Gonalkalvish, I can't pronounce that name, with a first round hook in ground strikes. The German Dagestani rides an 8-fight win streak, both 16 finishes, 20 wins. So is this man an immigrant to Germany? Because claim he's Dagestani, but he didn't even have the full chin strap. I think he was just rocking the goatee beard. So very confusing.
You can't get away with that if you live in if you live in Dagestan proper. No, Abus has been fighting on the German scene since his pro debut back in 2010. So yeah, he's a German resident and a wicked knockout guy. You know, they interviewed him before his fight, and they actually asked him why he doesn't use wrestling so much, because he's got great wrestling credentials. He's like, yeah, but fans think that's boring, so I like to go out and try to knock out people. It's pretty cool to be fighting at the top level and, you know, be able to have an attitude like that. Shows you what kind of talent you're looking at. And I think he's the top seed. That's 12 points for him in the 2 PFL fights. So,
goddamn, him and Ray Cooper.
And that's what's that, like 8 straight finishes. So.
Oh man, I would have to look up his record over
he's
here.
Kicking ass, man. Abus Magomedov. Another guy to note in that draw is Shamil Gamzatov. He's another one of the guys that was coached by Habib. He tends to be a much more conservative fighter. He's the kind of guy who appears to not really care if he makes it exciting. You know, he's going to take the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
And that's what he's done. You know, he's squeaked into the playoffs with 2 decisions, but he's going to be a tough low seed to run into in this tournament. He could be one of the favorites, even though he's coming in with just 6 points.
And how old is this guy? It looks like he's only 28. These guys were bricked up, though. They look like the Hector Lombards of the 185-pound division over there, kind of. Just some short 5'8", 5'9"ers.
Yeah, there were some. Yeah, that Bruno Santos versus John Howard fight had to be like the shortest big league middleweight fight in history. It was like a 5'7" middleweight against a 5'8" middleweight.
But I don't hate it, man. Brandon Halsey, he put on one of the most exciting fights ever in like PFL 3 or whatever it was. Those guys went to fight of the night. He did get taken out though recently.
Yeah.
Also, it looks like that
well,
one guy.
You're into Vinny Magalhaes. Yep.
Yes.
Vinny's great in that 205 draw. Just run through his first 2 opponents. We know he's a little bit chinny at times, which, you know, it's kind of a coin flip when you hit the tournament, you know, if you're going to get caught. But if he doesn't get caught, yeah, Vinny's looking great at 205.
I believe Vinny went like 5 rounds with David Branch over at World Series of Fighting as well for the 205-pound strap.
Yeah, Vinny's been all over the place. You know, he was the M1 Global Champ a while back. You know, beat some great fighters in Russia. Obviously, didn't have the success he was looking for in the UFC. Guys like Phil Davis and Anthony Peroche, blasphemy past there. But yeah, you know, he's adding some striking game. He looked a hell of a lot better on the feet against Halsey. I mean, it wasn't that. He wasn't on the feet that long, but, you know, again, threw a nice head kick, which is a great weapon for a guy who's got everyone worried about the takedown, you know. Throw that head kick. He doesn't have to worry. He doesn't care if he gets taken down off of it. So, yeah, I'm liking what I see from Vinny. Still improving at age 34.
Yes, it is crazy. I don't know. Everyone might know Vinny through, like, Hanato Larja, or whatever his name is. He's always calling Vinny a bum. I'm not sure if he's just trolling, because that's what he seems to do, or that's what Joe tells us he's doing. He's just trolling all the damn time.
But I don't know nothing.
But, man, the PFL, you got guys like Steven Seiler in #1 place, Ray Cooper in the #1 spot, Abus Magomedov, kind of just dark horses all around, riding that top seed into the playoffs.
And that's what you got to hope for if you're PFL. You know, you get a bunch of pretty well-known fighters. You know, all highly ranked fighters that just didn't happen to be in another big show, or, you know, came over like Story did. And then you hope that some guys are peaking at the right time. Like, I mean, Ray Cooper didn't look like this fighter at all last year. Like watching him fight in Hawaii, he was this same monster. So yeah, you hope that you get guys, that just had it click, and they seem to catch some lightning here. We'll see if it keeps rolling through the playoffs.
Man, it seems like $1 million is a nice motivation for fighters. They're like, hey.
They're like, hey, I can definitely train full time. I can definitely get out of bed. If not that I'm sure almost all these guys don't have any trouble getting to the gym, but having that extra incentive, it can't hurt.
Yeah, coming to mind, just right off the top of my head, Curtis Blades comes up. He's calling out Stipe. Yo, I want that Stipe fight. Stipe's like, no, I want the DC rematch. So there's like a circle jerk going on there. And finally, the UFC's like, you're not going to get it, dude. You're not going to get it. He's like, all right. And then he's like, then give me a rematch. Give me Francis Ngannou. I'll take his ass out. He's a big name. And so that's
But imagine you're a guy like Blades, and you're watching this tournament, and you're like, shit, I could totally be, I'm sure he thinks he would totally win the 265-pound bracket, and, he'd definitely be the favorite. $1 million, man. and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's like, damn, I could be fighting for $1 million, in Atlantic City and in New York, as opposed to flying over to China to fight Ngannou again. It's just still a great fight. I mean, as long as Ngannou shows up.
Yeah, and look at this here, man. So the heavyweight division. Oh wait, where is it? There it is. They got guys like Kelvin Tiller. That's the Mama's boy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Mama's boy's got 11 points. And then who else? I think Jack May. People were talking about him. But then surprisingly, the big names.
He won his first fight and got smoked in his second fight. But
Who did?
Jack May. He got wrecked in fight number 2.
But that's pretty cool, man. You can go 1-1. You still got 6 points. And you're still above guys like Jared Rosholt and Josh Copeland, who, usually get the decisions. They're only sitting down there with 3. So
that's a tough one. And I actually talked to this is an interesting story. Copeland was actually he was surprised because he got back to his locker room after winning that fight, and apparently folks were like consoling him and he's like, shit, man, I just beat Sean Jordan. Like, yeah, that's, you got to remember, these are still fights. Like, even if you just win and get 3 points, your guy like Josh Copeland, you're like, hell yeah, I just beat Sean Jordan, guy that beat Derek Lewis twice. So, the points are one thing, but fights are tough at this level.
Right, Sean Jordan getting a head kick KO. Who saw that shit coming? Definitely not Derek Lewis. And
he's out now, though. 0-2. He lost to the Scales and then lost to the Cuddly Bear.
Oh, man. Well, so I wonder if they're always going to do just 2 fights in a season. Because seeing this first season and guys scoop out, it's like 3 points that are making it into the playoffs. I think maybe next year we'll see like 3 fights. So you at least got to be in that 5 to 6 point range or something.
Yeah, and, they started it a little bit late in the year. I don't know if that's because they were still, getting their shit together, it being the first season. Maybe they'll start a little bit earlier. Like you say, we end up with, kind of a couple guys tied with 3 points, and, maybe they got to just kind of randomly take one of them and leave one of them home.
No, you do the old the bar trick. You take a pool cue, you break it in half, and throw it in the middle of them, and say, "Who makes it out alive? You're in the tournament."
There you go. We got to put that on pay-per-view.
Yes, yeah, that'll be a nice.
$5.99 on Fight TV.
Yes.
The PFL pool cue qualifiers.
I'm into it. We'll have some guy dressed as the Joker. Just set the whole scene. All right, well, on that note, a lot more decisions got done at PFL. I'm sorry, but be a little bit more excited and you'll get mentioned for show.
You know what? And I think this show, there were a few more guys who were just like, I need 3 points. And we did see that a little bit more than in the other shows where, everyone was going crazy for the KOs.
Luis Taylor comes to mind. I think he had 3s or something. He's like, give me 3 and I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of these guys were already in. You had 5 points, you were in. Like
Mm-hmm.
all you had to do is make sure you don't get your jaw broken with
Yes.
some big injury.
And
But other than the fact that nobody wants to lose a fight.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So man, let's jump into World Fighting Combat Akhmat 50,
Yeah.
which I heard is going to be streaming for free. I don't have a link yet, but we will get that to you people. And like you said, DC, the best Akhmat card that they put on, the best free card you're going to get this weekend. Why don't you
Yeah.
let the people know why?
Well, I would say that the number one reason for a guy like me is the fight depth. I mean, we have just world class guys all the way up for like the top 7 fights,
Mm-hmm.
but the real hook for this show is, of course, Alexander Emelianenko, brother of Fedor. Um, Pretty much anyone who's listening to us yak about MMA probably knows that Alex spent a while in jail. And man, he came out like a totally different beast. They obviously had a pretty good workout facility in his prison because he came out like a transformed dude, went from being like the doughboy into this like ripped monster, and he's just been knocking out all the opposition, in the past couple of years. So this is the Alexander Emelianenko show. He's going to be taking on an American wrestler, Tony Johnson. Um, a guy that probably his most famous fight was taking on Czech Congo and Bellator in one of
Mm-hmm.
those Congo fights that you just wanted to forget is like all clinching against the cage. Um, and that's probably going to be Tony's strategy this time because Alex is a scary guy to stand with. Um, Johnson will probably be looking for the takedown, maybe looking to work the clinch game. Um, but yeah, he's gonna have a roadie arena rooting for Alex to get another big KO. And that's probably the most likely betting line if they got this one on the Russian sports books.
We'll have to check and see if we can check it out. But yeah, Alexander, he's got the last name. He's got Emelianenko. This is like the UFC picking up Nate Diaz and throwing Diaz in the headliner. Like, is it Nick or Nate? I don't really know. And then Nate becomes his own star, so that worked out. But I last saw him at RCC 3, I believe is what it was. And I'll just be real, man. From what I know, this man went to prison, got a bunch of prison tattoos, and now has like hepatitis C or some shit, and he's still getting in there fighting. Usually, when you got that and you could potentially bleed on a guy, they don't let you still be a fighter. Somehow, this is Russia though.
Yeah, I don't. That's news to me. I try to watch the fights and ignore all
The
the
gossip.
political all the political stuff. I don't know if that's true. That's pretty crappy. Bellator did that a couple years ago, letting a guy. I'm not gonna say his name because I'm only 99% sure. I don't want to get it wrong. They had a situation like that where they had let a guy with hepatitis into the cage. I don't even think they got in any trouble for it, crazily, but. Um, yeah, that's a pretty sketchy situation if that's true. Yeah.
It almost just, and this is all alleged. I don't know. This is stories I've heard. It gives a different kind of aspect to the fight, though, man. Because if he's on top of a guy, if he's bleeding, you're like, oh no, he's gonna bleed into his mouth, and then you're freaking out about that too. But
Yeah.
so he's
Probably a fight that shouldn't be happening if that's true. Yeah, I never know what to believe coming out of Russia, man.
but Alexander Emelianenko, I'm going through his record. He fought for M1 for a long time,
Yeah,
back
and pride.
before his stint, and
Yeah.
then where was it? Lost to Jeff Munson, goes and beats Bob Sapp. Bob Sapp, Jesus Christ, he's headed
That's
back to
not a fight.
prison. Was gonna fight Mirko. Apparently that got canceled, but then goes to World Fighting Akhmet. 42 gets a W first round. 44 gets
Yeah,
a W.
that was all post prison. He's just been killing guys. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this in his game, if you're rooting for Alex to lose, which I'm sure a lot of fans are, the weakness in his game that's been exploited a couple times recently is he's been taken down a lot.
Mm.
All working out and getting ripped and eating prison vitamins didn't get him any better takedown defense. Now, Victor Pesta, Gabriel Gonzaga, those weren't wrestlers, so those guys gassed out after about half a fight, being like in the main event and trying to wrestle the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Johnson's actually a wrestler, so I could see him actually pulling off the game plan that kind of worked for Pesta and Gonzaga. Like, I'm not putting money on him, especially with the jet lag. We see all the time guys fly, halfway across the world, and suddenly their great cardio is just pretty good cardio, and that could be a big difference here. But it's a challenge, they're not lining up cans for Mr. Emelianenko.
No, man, and I love it. If he can, build up another Russian promotion over here, why not, man? The more, the merrier.
Hey, as long as he's not infecting people, we'll see about that, but...
Yeah, and I watched the Victor Pesta fight. I don't think he got any cuts in that one in terms of bleeding all over people, but it definitely brings in a different angle to look at. But Tony Johnson, man, how soon are they going to stand it up from like full mount when he's ground and pounding him? How soon do you think the ref's going to come in and say, nah?
That is how Alex got off his back. It wasn't like full mount. That is how he got off his back last fight, was a ref stand up. Yeah, I wouldn't bet against it. If it was ACB, they tend to be pretty legit. Acrobat fights tend to be legit from what I've seen, but you just never know. You never know with pretty much kind of these cards that aren't really probably don't have a lot of oversight. But again, I'm speculating. I'm no expert in Russia. I just watch all the fights.
Yeah, and man, it's not like this doesn't happen everywhere. Because look at Michael Bisping facing Dan Henderson. Look at Darren Till facing Wonder Boy. These guys are getting hometown decisions over there in the UK. And Brazil
the UK
as well.
is notorious. Yeah, I always hear people talk about Brazil, but yeah, UK, man.
Yeah. Well,
UK's got the special officiating.
Checking out Tony Johnson, though.
Name it.
After his Czech Congo loss, which was probably for the belt or something, he fights over at Fight Nights Global, gets a first-round victory, and then he goes and faces the real Bellator champ, Vitaly Minakov, over at Fight Nights Global. And
yes, real world champ Minakov.
Yeah.
No, I don't know about that, but yeah, the undefeated 21-0 monster. That's probably Minakov's one of his best wins since he's been back in Russia, along with Copeland. I mean, Bigfoot Silva is a win, I guess, but it's like I don't even know what he is anymore. We'll see if he can even beat the Chinese guy in a couple of weeks.
Yes, is he headed to like Road FC, or where was he going?
Rebel FC, which is a Singapore-based promotion that's starting to run some pretty decent shows in China. And I don't say this about any fights. They 100% had a fixed fight with the guy that he's facing, actually. Wenbo Liu Wenbo. He fought Shannon the Cannon Rich, who's actually been suspended in the past for possibly throwing a fight with Brian Ebersol in the U.S. And this guy who's fighting Bigfoot, Liu Wenbo, went up against Shannon Rich a couple fights ago, and they did the whole Fry Takayama, hold the back of the neck and do the hockey punches thing.
Yeah.
It was one of the only times I've watched a big MMA fight and been like, this ain't real. So that'll be a strange card,
Oh man, and yeah, Bigfoot.
Bigfoot pulling that shit, but hey, who knows? Give the guy $1 million. I mean, we'll see.
Dude, and Bigfoot, ever since leaving the UFC, he's getting KOs everywhere, but he's getting, from what I hear, $300K, $500K to go to these shows. I think he went to ACB, Fight Nights Global, all this stuff, man.
And he needs, it sounds like, he needs the money from medical treatment, so it's like,
damn.
It's kind of it sucks, but for a guy who might not have any way of getting that money otherwise, better than nothing, right?
I guess so, man. I'll never forget Bigfoot versus Alistair Overeem. I used to be a big Overeem mark, and
Oh, well,
Overeem talks so much shit. He's just like, "You're gonna be an easy fight," da 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 da, and then Bigfoot's just like, "Dude, there is no easy fights. You're coming in a little cocky here." And after he KOs him, Herb Dean had trouble ripping him away from Overeem. He
yeah.
wanted to beat the hell out of Overeem, a KO'd Overeem.
And,
That
and,
was
and Bigfoot's not usually like that either, man.
no,
But
no.
he wasn't. He had it. Yeah, that had to be the highlight of Bigfoot's UFC run. I mean, I think we can probably figure out what the highlight of his pre-UFC run was. Beating Fedor, obviously. The ticket to his $300,000 or $500,000 paydays in Russia nowadays.
Nice.
I bet he'd love to run that one back eventually. Some random Fight Nights show or whatever. Fedor versus or M1 probably. Maybe, who knows.
Yo, and then how about what was I just gonna say? Emelianenko? No. Oh, I lost it.
We're looking at the co-main event because the co-main event is another really interesting fight. Zelimkhan Umiev.
Yes.
This guy's a really good fighter. He has just been hanging out in Russia his whole career, but the guy is good. He's a very patient fighter. He looks like one of these huge guys that's just going to run in for the knockout or whatever. But he's a technician. He's a good fighter. He's taken on a solid heavyweight wrestler in Evgeny Goncharov. I think Umiev will probably beat him again, defend his WFCA title. But that's a good fight and one of the best heavyweight fights they can make in Russia these days. So that should be fun. There's also a great flyweight fight on the card. Imran Bukuev and Azam Gafarov, a couple of undefeated fighters, undefeated young guys. Both of them are really good strikers. Bukuev is one of those guys who's an awesome wrestler. So he's like, okay, since I'm an awesome wrestler, that means I can jump around the cage doing like flying knees and shit because I'm not really worried I'm going to be able to get back up if I get put down. So yeah, keep an eye out for flyweight champ Imran Bukuev. Should be a good fight, and Gafarov's a guy who likes to strike too. So sometimes we end up with a lot of wrestling on these ACMAT shows, but definitely some striking skill at the top of the card this time.
Nice. That is awesome to hear. And so what? These two Russians are probably. I see Umanev is rocking the Akhmat sweater, so he's got to be coming from that camp. The same with
he's their champ, man.
Nice. Well, it's crazy that Emelianenko is headlining over this, but dude, I'm sick of people talking about that shit. If you got bigger names, have them headline. This is what grows your other. Like they're the Bellator.
It's a classic Scott Coker method, like in Bellator. It's what he's always done. You put the biggest names at the top, and then you put your guys that you want to build in the stars. Yeah. It makes sense to me. It makes sense if you're trying to run a business and sell tickets and stuff, I'm sure Umiev probably understands. I don't know, man. Maybe fighters hate that. Maybe fighters get pissed about that, but I mean, I would, you got an Emelianenko on the card. He's got to be in the main event. And, this is a big, we're talking about this as a big card talent-wise, which it's also just a big card for ACMAT. They're running it in Moscow as opposed to running it back in Chechnya. So, they're trying to put butts in seats.
Dang. And that's definitely a big deal, not being... Do they usually host from, like, Grozny, or whatever that town's called?
Yeah, Grozny's where they have most of their shows. They'll also run, like, random shows out in the countryside in Chechnya. They'll head to... they'll do outdoor shows every once in a while. But yeah, run into Moscow. And, hey... Could be an attempt to take advantage of this big gap that's kind of appeared now that Fight Nights Global is kind of scuffling and ACB is cutting back on their shows. Maybe this is Kadarov's try to play for like to become the big show in Russia. Again, I'm just bullshitting here from my comfy seat on the hill.
No, I like that, man. So as you go back and you look at the history, It looked like ACB kind of started in that Chechnya area. Maybe I'm wrong here. And then they totally switched and went international. And Akhmet just pops up out of nowhere like it was almost the original ACB. Or I don't know if I got it all wrong.
Yeah, I think the latter that you said, this show has been around for a while, and it was really like for a while it was almost exclusively Chechnyan fighters, mostly beating the crap out of guys flown in from other countries. It got more competitive as time goes on, which can also be said of ACB. The Russian fighters used to just crush the foreign guys there at the start of ACB. ACB started in Dagestan. That's their center, Dagestan, versus this one centered in Chechnya. But yeah, they seem to, they always seem to kind of, we did see ACB come over to Chechnya, so I don't think there was ill will or anything, but just maybe taking advantage of a market opportunity now that ACB's run out of steam with their overexpansion, or the money running out, or whatever has happened there.
You know what it is? I just got to catch up on my freaking geography because I hear Chechnya and Dagestan, and I'm almost linking them together. So I'll have
it's like one mountain valley or another.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I know freaking one of them's over near the sea, Dagestan. Dagestan's not where you think it is, man. It's like the Middle East almost. Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, man,
showing off our high-quality American geography education here.
Yeah, and we got to hit on something else because
I got about 10 minutes left on my battery here, so yeah.
Fantastic. I got news yesterday.
Okay.
Risen did an interview with Yahoo or something, and Sakakibara has came out and said next year we're gonna do 20 events, 4 mega cards. 4 medium-sized ones, and then a bunch of other smaller shows throughout Japan. I love this, man. Horiguchi is just bringing back the Japanese MMA scene. Maybe I'm giving him too much love, but now we got guys like Tenshin, Rina, and Kane Ringa kind of help bring us up with the ladies because it seems like they're big stars. Yeah, and so, man, big news going on all over the world with international MMA. And then Brave just hosted, they're going to have an app now, too. So if you're not in a country where you can't order the fight through Fight TV or have it on Flow Combat, you can now go through their app.
And that's great because there have been a couple Brave cards where, us diehards get up to the showtime and we're like, is there going to be a stream? Where the hell do we find it? So yeah, it's good that Brave is really expanding, and you never know with rich people, but shit, these guys should have enough money to run an international fight organization if they want to. It's like, the ruler, some big rich barons of the Middle East. So it's always good to have super wealthy patrons for the fight game.
Yes, I mean, look at, I believe it's the same guy who started the ADCC. He started Brave. He's like some oil chic, or maybe he didn't start ADCC, but he's close to those guys who did. And yeah, he's got that oil Bahrainian money, man, that royalty money. So that's what we need in MMA.
And one thing about that is that they've spent a lot of money flying over coaching, like top-level coaching. Like I know Frankie Edgar, Shorty Torres, guys like that heading out there to work with the local Middle Eastern fighters, and the fight quality has gone up massively. Like the level of technical ability in the local fighters is, it's crazy compared to like 4 or 5 years ago when it was like, watching a regional scene, and now they've got some guys popping out of there that look like they could do it on the world stage. So yeah, it's cool. It's always cool to see, and that's a company that's talking about going to all sorts of countries like India, and they're in Morocco. So trying to hit on places where MMA hasn't made it yet. And hey, as global fight fans, that's just what we want to see. More talent and more opportunities for fighters.
100%, man. And on that note, it is crazy. Freaking One Championship has the One Super app. Brave is growing in the Middle East. We got all these Russian promotions. Donald Trump meets with Putin. The next thing we know, the dummy and Dana White make a deal. I don't know what the hell's going on here, man, but I love it. I love everything.
I never know, man, but I love that I love every Monday I look at the schedule and there's all kinds of good fights to watch.
Oh yes.
That's the life, man. We got it good. We got it good compared to the days of hunting for a stream that would like kind of work.
Right. Thank God for the internet, man.
Yeah.
These smartphones are making things so much easier, so much better.
I don't even own one. I don't need one of them things. Smartphones.
Oh well, the Fight TV app. I stream it straight from here to my TV, so that's awesome.
No, and I can't use any of the fight codes because I'm phoneless. That's pretty much the one thing I miss out on.
Oh man. Well, that is World Combat. Or wait, what the hell is it again?
WFCA,
World Fighting Combat, Ahmed.
That's gonna be fun, man.
Heck yeah.
Bunch of good fights on the undercard too, in those big ones we talked about. It'll be fun.
Yeah. So tonight, everyone catch Bellator. Tomorrow we'll probably.
And CES.
Oh, and CES.
If you got Access TV or know how to find a stream.
There you go. Get your hands on that stream. Tomorrow, Ahmed, Brave, Tyson Fury fighting and boxing, all types of awesome nonsense. Tune into this channel to get all the great live reactions. Make sure you follow DC Howard at FightFan_DC on Twitter. Check out all his great World MMA content on MMA-Today. And that's all we got for you today. Back to you, sickos. We're out of here.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
No problem, DC. We will definitely have you back for more either previews or recaps. We'll know more in the future.
Sounds good.
All right. Back to you, sickos. We're out of here.